Timmu, welcome to Pioneering in the Metaverse. We're excited to have this conversation with you. For those who
Mhm.
don't know who Timmu is, you do a lot of cool stuff, specifically with Ready Player Me, where you're the CEO and co-founder. This cross-game avatar platform is used by over 4,000 companies. When I saw that number, I was very intrigued and interested in hearing more about this. But you've raised over $72 million from A16Z. Congratulations on that. That is a huge achievement.
Thank you.
But you've also been building avatar tech for 9 years, which tells me that this whole concept of jumping into the metaverse space and 3D tech and AR and VR is not some trend that you decided to jump on. It's something that you've been invested in, working in for quite some time. So maybe we
hmm
start there. Tell us a little bit about
hmm
your backstory, and then we'll jump right into what you think is happening in the metaverse.
Sure. Great. So first, great to be here. Yeah, so I've been working on avatars for a long time. I think the journey actually started from just being a gamer growing up. RuneScape was my go-to game. I spent many years in RuneScape. So kind of grew up as a gamer, and then before university, at university, I just got interested in 3D stuff. So I started 3D printing things and bought some printers, and that led to 3D scanning items and people, which led to avatars. And that's basically how I got started with like avatar scanning. Just decided to build our own scanner with like 70 cameras or something, 80 cameras like in a circle as like DSLRs to make like super realistic scans of people. And then yeah, basically that's how we got into avatars and have been doing it ever since. But yeah, had many different kind of iterations of the company and the product in the process.
Very cool. And this is a question I like to ask every guest, just to get this sort of get the ball rolling. How do you define the metaverse?
hmm Well, 3D virtual world where people spend time together, social 3D virtual world. I think that's kind of like the base. I think what's different for the actual metaverse and the kind of gaming world we have today is that those games are connected. The metaverse is like kind of a network of different 3D virtual worlds, not just one particular game that claims to be a metaverse. That's just a game.
Mm.
So I think what's missing from the current gaming world for us to really have a metaverse is the interoperability part and the part where, as a user, you can have a consistent experience across many different games or worlds, and that's kind of like what makes something a metaverse. It's more like the internet in that sense. You know, you kind of go different between different sites and have a somewhat consistent experience over like the gaming world of today, where you have millions of different apps and games that you download. They don't share anything between them,
Mm.
which is something we're trying to change through avatars, and a lot of Web3 companies are trying to change in many different ways as well.
So the point you make about interoperability, that's a term that comes up quite often in these conversations.
hmm
How does interoperability happen? Because if you have one metaverse project that, let's say, mirrors more of a cartoon-like feel and experience, and you've got another metaverse that's perhaps a little more hyper-realistic, how do you bridge the two?
hmm Well, you can. That's like a product we will release soon. It has kind of stylization. So you have one avatar, one identity, but it transfers. The style changes depending on the world you go into. So you can kind of keep the parts that users or players want to be persistent and still make the model fit into the visual kind of aesthetic of the game you're going into. I mean, unless the transition is like extremely radical. But we're trying to start from like covering a reasonable range, which will already open up a lot of different things, and then cover the extremes over time. And I think with like AI generation, AI 3D generation, AI 2D generation, and I think we need a few more breakthroughs, but it's not that hard to see how that's gonna actually work on scale.
You mentioned AI. That's always a a fun term to talk about. Do you
Mhm.
see AI speeding up the growth, the development, the adoption of the metaverse, or do you see it potentially changing the metaverse altogether?
I mean, I think all of that changing definitely in ways we don't even imagine now. I think like AI on scale will make game production a lot cheaper, or it'll make it easy for like small teams to build like meaningful big experiences that they couldn't build before. Which means like more supply, more interesting games, more interesting game concepts. People will be more experimental with like, how they build things. It's cheaper to experiment. So, that will create better games, which will create more players, hopefully,
Mm.
or people spending more time in games than they do today. And that kind of grows the whole market. So I'm sure AI is definitely a tailwind for the whole industry. And this is like generally good news for developers.
Is gaming the secret entrance into the metaverse? Maybe not secret is maybe that's not the right word, but it seems like gamers would be the first to adopt something like the metaverse because it seems like there's a seamless transition from one to the other. They're almost already in that kind of an environment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like gaming is the metaverse today. That at least like a very big part of it is like games. Like when you think about people that spend time in 3D virtual worlds today socializing, then they do that in games like Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, and many, many other games. That's where the metaverse already exists in some way. It's a compelling experience. It's a compelling kind of a world people want to spend time in. There are some like non-game 3D experiences as well that are cool, of course, but most of it is like very much games. Um, yeah, so and definitely I think gaming is the place to start in that sense. Like those people know how to spend time in 3D virtual worlds. They're used to doing that, used to having an avatar, they're used to speaking with other people that have avatars. They're used to spending money on their avatars and so forth. So like that's where the industry, that's where the market is.
And for the gamers who might be listening or watching this, thinking to themselves, okay, so Timu, if you're telling me that I'm already in that kind of an environment, why would I want to go and operate in another environment if I'm already getting that experience? What would be the benefit for those gamers to move into another environment?
I mean, like most gamers that are not like there's some gamers that are extremely competitive and they just play one game for a decade and they want to be as good as they can in this. But most players are not like that. They like to play different games. They like to explore. They like different types of games with different types of moments. Like I sometimes like to play single player experiences, and I sometimes like to play multiplayer experiences. I sometimes like to play more competitive things. I have a different game for each occasion. So that's already happening in that
Mm.
sense. I think what the metaverse as an interoperable kind of a network of virtual worlds provides is a more consistent experience across games. So you can go to one game you really enjoy and buy a bunch of assets from there, and then use that in different games you enjoy. You can have the same account. You can like level up your status or like gain status in one world, and then carry that to other games in other worlds as well. So that's really like the new type of experience that people enjoy, could enjoy, or yeah, that will kind of change in their lives. But they're already playing a lot of different games.
Yeah. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment. If I'm a big game developer
Hmm.
and you're a big game developer, and I've got, you know, whatever, 10,000 people playing my game daily or something like that, spending money in my game, why would I be incentivized to create something that's interoperable with your game and have all of my gamers suddenly go play your game and start spending
Mhm.
money on your side, right? Like I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it from that perspective. What's the benefit to
Mhm.
current game developers?
So, if you sell a pair of sneakers that are only usable in New York, Lower Manhattan, only on Manhattan, versus you sell a pair of sneakers that are usable in North America or like, the whole world, then obviously like having more utility for those things you buy makes them more valuable for people.
Mm,
So, which means that as a game developer, mostly like you have 3% of people, maybe 5%, maybe a little bit more, that actually pay for a game. It's a free to play game. Now, if you offer them value beyond your own game experience, then you might convert more people to buy assets, or you might make a few people spend a lot more on assets because they're not making an investment into their game that they might think they won't play in 3 months or a year or whatever. They're making an investment into their metaverse experience, through their avatar
mm,
that stays with them across games. And we expect that this will increase the market size for virtual items, avatars, and stuff like that, because virtual items and avatars become more useful for more people. So like that kind of the fact that a few gamers will leave, maybe, like most games today, a lot of games advertise with ads. So literally you cover your whole fucking screen of your game with a playable ad of another game.
it's
You
true,
can't really
yeah.
go worse. Like that's like the worst thing. Like it's a shit experience and it
Yeah,
literally like is designed and optimized to like drive a person away from a game.
yeah.
So like, it's kind of like very hard to see how it's gonna be worse. Yeah. So I think like this is just like the thing that we're trying to prove on scale is that interoperability makes you more money as a developer and is beneficial for your users and so forth. And we're trying to make the whole market bigger, basically.
How far are we from that kind of interoperability in your mind?
Yeah. Well, I think for that to really be proven, we need a network of at least tens of millions of users in a few different games that are interoperating between each other. I think that's where we see it on a scale where it matters for like big studios. We can see early signs of that in our network already, but it's like too early. So yeah. How long? I think like in a few years we should be in a good place where we've
Mm,
seen some scaled interoperable use cases that are are proven. But I think like just the kind of the core logic behind it. I'm extremely confident that it will like kind of work out in the way that it actually is beneficial for everyone involved.
And from a hardware versus software perspective, obviously the Apple Vision Pro just released, already seeing videos of people walking around the streets wearing it, driving their cars wearing it. It all looks a little dangerous to me, but they're wearing it and they're doing stuff in it. Some of the videos I've seen look absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
So from a software perspective, it seems like we're headed in that direction, that integration of VR, AR into our everyday experience, which I imagine will only get amplified through the gaming sector. But from a hardware perspective, even that Apple Vision Pro is still this big, bulky piece of machinery with a long cable that goes down your back.
Hmm.
How far are we from something a little bit more simple, like our cell phones, for example? They're small. They at one point they were like this big, but they did
Hmm.
so much, and they still do.
Hmm.
Eventually, the hardware is going to continue to shrink in size and also grow in power and utility. How far are we?
Yeah. Well, I think like first, like VR, AR, XR, spatial computing, this technology has so many names. Uh, it is not necessary for the metaverse to exist,
Mm.
People already spend a lot of time in 3D virtual worlds through games, we know, Roblox, Fortnite, etc. So I don't think it's necessary for us to, have the metaverse. I do think it's going to happen. And, we started because of VR, actually. That's like avatars for VR. So I've been kind of around this space for a long time, and seeing the Apple headset launch is like fucking incredible.
Hmm.
So how long it will take for it to become less bulky? I don't know if the bulkiness is the number one problem. Like, I'm in Estonia at the moment, so I don't have a Vision Pro. It's sitting in my New York like place. So I'm like looking forward to trying myself. But my co-founder is like wearing it like five hours a day, So and he's clearly an early adopter and so forth. But I think it's more about like the value and the experience that this like headset can provide. Like, these things are heavy. I wear them every day. Like, I'm sure it will get lighter, and it will get better. I think the key question is like, how different is the experience through these headsets from like what you can have on your laptop? Like, this is not the last final form of like, computer. Like,
Right.
that's not the last interface we will ever use, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
little brick in your pocket with a little screen on it. Like, it's extremely limiting. It's very powerful, and it's like much better than we had before, but it's like, it's not the final form.
Sure.
So like AR and VR like are definitely a step towards the final form, I guess. Um, so yeah, when I think like Apple, first, like the fact that they launched it at such a high price point is probably a feature on its own. Like, it's desirable. At least they want to make it desirable. Like, if you wear a $500 Oculus headset on a plane, you look like, not cool. If you wear a $4,000 headset on a plane to watch a
Yeah.
movie, that's like, that it can be cool. It can be desirable, at least, right? So, and if the experience is great itself, which is the key thing, obviously, then I think this could be a good kind of device to kickstart the industry and bring in developers and bring in, it's like a lot of new design space, right? In this
Mm.
like new spatial computing platform or whatever. So like there will be new interesting applications that we don't know yet that might be kind of killer apps beyond what we have today. They'll bring in more people. And also it's pro. So there will be a next version that is not pro. There's probably
Yeah. Yeah.
2.5 grand, maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's made of plastic, like, who knows? But Apple, out of all the companies in the world, is like, they are the company that creates a new category. They've done it
Yeah.
many times in the past. So I'm sure they know what they're doing, and they have a very long-term vision for it. I have an ongoing bet with my friends we made, I think, 5 years ago. And my bet was that in 10 years, the primary device we use for computing is going to be some kind of a glasses or some kind of interface like that over like a
Looks like you might
smartphone.
be winning.
I mean, maybe. I'm not sure, but I'm like in it, like, yeah, among like high income people, probably, maybe, but it's going in that direction. Let's see.
Well, that's a really interesting point that you just made. Among high income people, the majority
Yeah.
of these users are not necessarily going to go out and spend 4,000 US dollars on a virtual headset, right? They're going to see it as a splurge purchase that serves very little utility in their everyday lives. How do
Mhm.
you improve mass adoption when the hardware required to adopt is so difficult to attain for so many people?
Well, I think we start on a reasonable price point compared to any other kind of major technology. Like, how
Okay.
much did the first mobile phone cost, for example? Or how much utility did the first like landline phone have?
Fair.
You
Yeah.
could just call to like three people.
Yeah.
Like that's not very useful. So or like, whatever, like personal computers. I just
Mhm.
saw an ad from like, can't remember what the year was, but it was sold for like in today's dollars, like $13,000 or something. And it's like the first kind of Yeah, so it's
It
like
was that big box that
not.
took up a whole room and 10 people
Yeah.
working on it.
No, that was $3 million. It was a small one you put it on a table. Like it's like
Right.
I don't even like, I'm too young to really know these things. But um anyways, so this is very normal that you start from a high price point, and then as the production scales, as the technology matures, the price will good come down and will be more and more available, more and more available to more people. Same thing happened with the smartphones, right? Like it started from a very reasonable price point actually, compared to the other ones, but then now like 3 billion people have a smartphone or something,
Yeah.
4 billion maybe. So it's like a crazy, it's a crazy number.
Yeah.
But it took 2 decades or something.
So
No more, a little bit
inevitable,
less.
ultimately,
Yeah.
by the sounds of it, that there will be adoption of these kinds of products because as they continue to expand, as they continue to see more demand for it, the price points will start to match the market demand for it.
I mean, the key question is like, is like the experience so much better that you want to wear ski goggles, ski goggles the whole day at the office,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like if it is, then yes, that's like if the platform is gonna happen, then that's a natural path. But I haven't had the experience myself yet. I think um, we'll see over the next like 6 months on how much kind of developers pick up and build new things for the Vision Pro platform or Vision platform. And we'll see how much people actually kind of use them and keep using them.
Yeah. I want to pivot a second here and ask you, what are you most excited about when it comes to this space? What excites you when you think about where it's going, where it is today?
Yeah. What excites me? I mean, maybe it's like, I mean, definitely the Vision Pro and all of this stuff excites me a lot because that's where we all got started. And I'm like, VR kind of like native. So, yeah, but then I think like the big thing is there's a whole generation growing up now that are basically playing games since they remember themselves. They are like virtual world natives.
Mm.
They have avatars. They are communicating with their friends in virtual worlds more than they're communicating with them in real life, or when they're in real life they play games together. So like there's a whole generation that already does that, and it's not only like gamers. Like when I grew up, gamers were kind of like a little nerdy, or like they were like outcasts a little bit.
Yeah.
Now it's not
It's
the case.
embraced.
Now,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody plays games. Like everybody just plays. They don't even call themselves gamers. They just play games, and I'm excited about seeing like how this whole generation kind of will change. How when they grow up, like what's the impact of that to gaming? I think that's what I'm kind of most excited about.
And what are you worried about? What can what can potentially happen that ruins or delays this whole pathway to adoption?
Yeah, I mean, like the gaming industry definitely is not like having the best of times at the moment.
Okay.
Like lots of layoffs,
Yeah. Okay.
declining growth, new kind of like Apple App Store rules for privacy that changed a lot of the dynamics. So yeah, like people are in pain at the moment mostly. So like we need to get over this kind of hump. But overall, I think like long term, we're on a good track.
Mm.
Like 10 years ago when we started, like our basically core bet was that people will spend more and more time in virtual worlds over the next years and decades to come. Like we're still very confident that that's true.
Okay. At the top of this conversation, we talked about how you've worked with, or your platform, Ready Player Me, is used by over 4,000 companies. Uh, I can't imagine that all 4,000 of these companies are in the Web3 space.
No.
Right. How are you seeing the reception to this type of technology in the traditional Web2 space?
Yeah. Well, I would say definitely the Web3 space is very aligned with like the core value prop of interoperability,
Hmm.
and wants to see the world kind of become more open and connected. So that's where we have the biggest kind of value alignment in that sense. With Web2 games, like we're mostly focused on small and mid-sized studios, and the value we provide for them today is like save time from building your own character system, use our character system content tools to basically get to the market faster, cheaper to live operate your game, easier to make money with avatars. Like very simple kind of tool-based value props, even if you're like even if it's a single player tool essentially, without the interoperability and stuff. That's how we basically work with Web2 companies. And then as we scale, interoperability doesn't become like a value-based thing or like a philosophical kind of idea. It becomes a very real thing where if you join the Ready Player Me network, you kind of use our avatars, we can drive millions of people to your game. Or you can sell items in your game that are proven to make more money than, you can sell items in your game that work in other games as well,
Mm.
which will make you more money than items that you only sell that are only in your game. So we are like really working to get to a point where interoperability is not a philosophy, it's a based thing, value-based thing. It's like so we can prove the value of interoperability. And then it
Okay.
doesn't matter if you're Web2 or Web3. You just use us because it's better for your business.
What's the current barrier that you're seeing on the Web2 side? If a traditional brand comes to you and says, "Hey, we're interested in this space, but we know nothing about it," what's the first thing you have to educate them on?
A traditional brand or a Web2 gaming company.
Maybe a traditional brand. Have you worked with traditional brands as well?
Yeah, so we work with quite a few brands. Yeah, Tommy Hilfiger,
Okay.
Dior, Calvin Klein, um,
So in those
Angry
examples,
Birds, and so forth.
how do
So in
you,
those,
sorry?
mhm.
No, I
Yeah,
was going to say in those specific examples, the Dior, the Calvin Klein, those traditional brands, how do you convince them, if any convincing is even needed, but what's the education, what's the learning curve like for those brands to get into this kind of space? Because I think that's the main step to additional adoption is when a consumer of that brand, a follower of that brand, sees them participating in a virtual world and goes, "Oh, now I'm interested in seeing what this is about." But those brands, there might be somebody at a Calvin Klein that already knows a little bit about the virtual world and goes, "Yes, I want to spearhead this. I'm interested. We know how to make this work." But
mhm.
then there are other brands who might be interested and don't actually understand what it involves. What's that learning curve like?
Yeah. So, how most brands see the space is number one, getting access to young users that basically, just for marketing purposes. And number two, like to see how much people are spending on virtual clothing essentially in games. And they already have a brand they built in the physical world, so they also want to use that in a digital world to monetize it. And it's a very clear opportunity for all of them. So most of them are very educated on the topic already. Most of them have a dedicated effort towards games, or at least some people that like are covering that area. So we don't usually go out or at all go out to brands and try to convince them to take part of virtual worlds. We just work with the ones that already know they want to do that, and they
Mm.
usually find us. And yeah, so like, and we have a very clear kind of value prop for them. It's like, creating assets that are usable across our whole network of games, which is many of them, over just building an asset for a particular game. Yeah, so lots like yeah, access to many games is what we offer.
So ultimately, it comes back to the accessibility of it all.
Sure.
And where in your mind are we still early in this space, or are we ahead of where we should be? or are we just exactly where we're supposed to be?
And in the space, you mean with brands or metaverse or
Sorry, with
games or
metaverse, with the
yeah.
metaverse. Yeah.
I mean, I think the metaverse is like yeah, it's an interesting one to answer because like the metaverse is kind of just became this like word.
Became a
We
buzzword.
yes, that was like extremely overused and many things were overpromised and all that stuff. So like I think we're in some sense we're ahead. But on the other hand, like the gaming industry, which we consider to be a big part of the metaverse or the main part of the metaverse today, is gigantic. You know, it's a $200 billion industry, and it's it has some rough years now, but it's been growing very fast, and it will continue growing very fast. So in that sense, it's very much here. It's like much bigger than music or film or any big other big kind of entertainment industries already. So yeah, I think it depends on how you want to kind of look at this thing. If we're talking about the Web3 metaverse worlds, I think like um, most of those games and worlds take a long time to build, especially if we want to make them good, as you know, and like they will start coming out now, and they will be polished and properly kind of released over this year and next year. So we will see. We will see how this space will unfold when we actually have scaled experiences out there that people can access and use and enjoy.
Amazing. I want to ask you one more question here. If there's someone listening or watching this, has heard everything you said, is still a little hesitant, doesn't really know whether they should get into this environment, into this space because of maybe lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, what would you say to them? How would you
Um,
encourage them to start to learn more, to pursue this new environment?
yeah, so if we're talking about Web3 games and Web3 virtual worlds, then I think that it's just like as a gamer, a lot of people have a kind of a allergic reaction to it for some reason. And I think they
It's a
need to
good way
just
of
get
putting
over
it.
it. Yeah. So, and that's like being so strange for me. So I think it's just like getting over that allergic reaction and just getting into the thing, like trying out different products, trying out different games, just to understand like what could there be to learn from this space, or what could be some new experiences you can have in this space that you can't with like Web2 regular games you're used to playing anyways. So I think it's just jumping in and messing around with things just to explore and learn is the main thing. And then, if something becomes exciting, then you might become a player. Um, yeah, I think like in general, there aren't many people that are not already playing games or have not played games or used some kind of 3D virtual worlds already in like kind of our age class, roughly at least, or
Mhm.
definitely younger. So, that's not new for people. I think like, yeah, I think like what's a little bit underused maybe for people in our age that are not like, 16 today, is just like using games and virtual worlds for keeping in touch with family and friends,
Mhm.
doing something fun together, playing some game or meeting in a virtual world and having an awesome experience. I think there's a lot to it. So that's something to try as well.
Amazing. Timmu, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
Thank
for
you,
joining
man.
us on Pioneering in the Metaverse. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the insight. You and the team are doing incredible things. Really cool to see. Keep up the great work, and let's chat again soon. And this is a
Yeah.
very cool space to continue these conversations.
Thank you, Samir. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.